lovers, and welcome. I want to start off by saying I am so blessed to be in a position to suggest tips and tools and even products that can help you lead a tantric life of liberation and expansion. And one of my absolute favorite places to purchase spiritual and sexy items is Wands. Wands.com, spelled Wands. Wands sells, you guessed it, crystal pleasure wands, along with so much more, including yoni eggs, free bleed blankets, other amazing products for yoni steaming. I've been using these products and products similar to them for the better part of a decade, and they have been incredible allies in my journey of sexual healing and expanding my orgasmic potential. And I'm so grateful to be friends with the owner, Courtney. She's amazing. She has so generously provided us all with a discount code for 15% off, and that code is Leola. Leola. You can use it on their website, www.wands.com. Again, the code is Leola, Leola, for 15% off. I'll also make sure that this is linked in the show notes. So thank you for listening, and you're welcome for the inevitable pleasure and healing that is coming your way with these products. Now, let's get into the episode. Welcome to Talk Tantra to Me. It is such an honor to be holding space for this divine knowledge to make its way into your ears and lifestyle. Today, I talk Tantra with Alexandra Durigan. She is the founder of Origin Pelvic Care, focusing on holistic womb health, reproductive care, and sexual wellness. I am so grateful for her content and so appreciative that she's here on the podcast to offer her perspective of living an expansive life. So thank you for being here, Alexandra. Why don't you start by telling us a bit about your journey with, becoming this pelvic care healer, facilitator? How did you discover this passion and purpose?
Thank you so much, love. So happy to be here. So my journey, like many of our journeys, began when I was a much, much, much younger girl, a younger woman. I was the first to develop breasts and get my menstrual cycle and be in this blossoming body compared to my peers. And that immediately had impact on my experience of my body, of womanhood. And at the time informed me of this texture of non-safety and my blossoming. And so as the years went on, I ended up having an 8-year eating disorder and I lost my menstrual cycle. I was very, very numb in my sexual body, couldn't really access much value or relationship to my sexual body. And I eventually went into in-person treatment. And while I was in in-person treatment, there was this moment where I felt this light. I was on the floor crying at like 3 a.m. And I felt this light deep down in my body. And at the time, I would have described it as feeling this light in my belly. And now I really deeply know that to be my womb space. And felt in that moment that I chose myself, I chose my body, and I chose a different potential for my life. So my healing journey continued. And then at the time, it was a very natural next step for this brewing sensation, this like call forward to support other women. I wanted myself as a woman to be taken care of. I wanted to know that other women were being taken care of, resourced in their bodies, connected to their bodies. And growing up in Rochester, Minnesota, where the nation's #1 hospital is, it became a very natural next step for me to be a nurse. And so I saw my path forward as becoming a women's nurse. And I did that. And along that way, throughout college, I was really continuing my own deep healing journey. I brought back my menstrual cycle. I was a vegetarian and I started eating meat again. I started to experience that my sexuality could be valued, could be beautiful, could be sacred. And I know that we mentioned nourishment like right before hopping on the call, so it's so relevant. And as I became more nourished in mind, body, and spirit, I began to feel my true self as a woman again. what ended up transpiring along my journey is that I graduated nursing school and I went into women's specialty nursing. And it was there that I was interfacing with the deep trauma and lack of true care for women that is within the allopathic system at this time. And on the ward that I was working, it was a women's ward, women's unit, women and children. We also did labor and delivery, but a lot of reproductive surgery. And I started asking even more questions, having experienced so much in my own body of how do we get here? How are so many women needing reproductive surgeries, hysterectomies, oophorectomies, and what is another possibility for our lives?
Mm.
And that's when womb and pelvic care came into my world. And I started meeting just incredible midwives, nurses who were doing other work, womb keepers, womb wisdom keepers. And my world just expanded. And since then, I founded Origin Pelvic Care. My prayer is more for womanhood. And I want to see a world imbued with women just so deeply taken care of, so sovereign in their bodies, so alive to their reproductive vitality, their rhythms, their sexuality, like sexual health as whole health. That's not something that I got while working as a nurse. And I'm just really so honored to be doing this work and to be seeing it in many different aspects rippling into the world for women.
So beautiful. Thank you for sharing with such depth and vulnerability, the whole backstory that brought you here. You said something close to the beginning that I think so many women resonate with, which is that their blossoming didn't feel safe. Their discovery of their body and their sexuality didn't feel safe. Maybe it got unwanted attention or was judged or made to be bad in one way or another. And I just got back from facilitating a retreat, and we did this circle with the women, talking about how our inner child related to our sexuality and to our sensuality, and what we were taught about those pieces from a young age. And over again, the women spoke to this piece where I was taught that my sexuality wasn't safe. I was taught that my femininity wasn't safe. And what ends up happening is then we disregard that part of ourselves, we shut it down. And what we don't realize is actually what creates safety is the mastery of these pieces, these parts of ourselves that we've been told or conditioned or had experiences that create fear around, our intuition and our sensuality and, more of the darker parts of femininity. That what creates safety is our own mastery of it, which means going into it and approaching the scary piece. So I love that you brought that in, and I'm curious where this all brings you now. Like, how are you working with women now? How are you supporting them? What does this look like? Like, can you give us a blueprint for what holistic healthcare can look like instead of getting all these surgeries and more Western approach?
Totally, totally. Oh, yeah. And the things that you named, like all of them, right? Like this part of me is not safe, it's wrong, it's bad, I'm getting unwanted attention, and then it's becoming sovereign unto ourselves. And when we really know our sexuality is something so sacred, something
Mm-hmm.
worthy and deserving of care, something of great value, we start to experience our feminine power and our feminine health so much differently. And one of the pillars of my work is valuing sexual health as whole health, right? That this part of me deserves to be cared for and deserves to be so vital and well. So my work right now really is in the in-person hands-on care. So women come to me for 1, 2, 3 whole days, and we do these whole body, whole pelvic bowl immersive experiences. We balance the wholeness through the back body, down the jaw, the breast, the diaphragm, the belly. We come into the hips. We bring the womb, the uterine body back into center, balancing all of the intrapelvic ligaments, the fascia, the tissues. And then we do deep reverential vulva care, our vulva being such an extraordinary and important part of our body. And then with consent, like we're always working with deep reverence and consent, working at the pace of the woman's body, prioritizing that above all else, instilling agency and sovereignty, instilling a capacity to sense and feel. And then we do whole internal and cervical work, and our tissues need touch to be well. Our tissues need relationship to be well. Our muscles, our intrapelvic muscles need touch to be well. Our sacrum needs touch to be well, where all of our nerves then pour into the pelvis and innovate our reproductive centers and our sexual body. It's just, this is care that has been lost. And it was at one point well integrated into the consciousness of people and communities, that the health of women, the health of women's sexuality, the health of women's womb was the health of the tribe and the health of the community.
Mm-hmm.
And we lost that. That was fragmented from. And then we had the dawn of modern gynecology, where power was outside of ourselves and where a doctor knew more, where sexual health was severed from whole health, and where our bodies stopped being tended in the original ways that they once were. So my work with Origin Pelvic Care is really to restore original women's care, where we're going to be directly cared for and balanced in the health of our whole pelvic bowls, but again, ultimately whole bodies, so that we can be well in our lives, so that our womb can have its vital function, our ovaries, our cervix, just everything, our fertility, the way we conceive, the way we make love, the way we age as women, that it can be in vitality from the vitality of our tissues.
I'm sure this is so healing just to hear for so many women that have been touched in these places in ways that have felt non-consensual or not nourishing or mindful, whether it be by a lover, by a gynecologist, by themselves even. And to hear you speak of it this way is, yeah, that alone, I'm sure, is creating liberation for so many women. And I think that like, no wonder for anyone listening that feels like they're in a place in their life where they're stuck or not fulfilled or whatever it is. It's like, no wonder if your womb isn't nourished, and your womb is your connection to your creativity. How can you create a life that you love, that turns you on, that excites you, that feels vital, when we're so disconnected from this part of ourselves and are conditioned to be disconnected from it and are conditioned to treat it as like an afterthought even. I'd love if we could speak a little bit more into like the parts of the feminine reproductive system and what they represent, for each part, cervix, ovaries, all of that.
Totally. Yeah, totally. I think one thing I would really love to add first is that I really value holding this care in a way where women understand their wholeness.
Mm,
I think that a lot of times, we go to the doctor, it's like something's wrong with us. We're broken, something's not working right, whatever. And we really take that on, when we are always in wholeness and have capacity to come back into relationship and awareness of that wholeness. And our body is always wanting to be in regenerative health, and that any symptom we're experiencing is a deep languaging and a call home to that.
mm,
So whether we have an ovarian cyst or cervical dysplasia or a fibroid on our womb or irregular menstrual cycles, right? Like these things are calling us home. And not only, to kind of tie into what you just asked, babe, is for me, not only are these physical organ structures that need and deserve care, but they're also some of the most powerful energetic places that we have direct access to, and not just access to, but gnosis within, that we as women divinely know when we are in relationship to these parts of us. And so for me, like cervix is just deep intelligence. It's innervated with our vagus nerve, our nervous system. Our cervix is what opens to allow things to birth from womb to the earth. It's the mouth of our womb. How do we sound? How do we express? What is our womb-led truth? And cervix is also a place of profound pleasure and deeper embodied intelligence that every woman has access to. And then our womb, I mean, my God, where life comes into being, whatever that life is, whether that is the conception of a baby or the conception of what's true for us, our desires, our yearnings, what we want to create, what wants to move through us, how life wants to birth through us. It just is a portal to God. And our ovaries for me are like these dream seeds, like just these infinite creative dream seeds, and we ovulate and we just pass these dream seeds into womb to gestate and birth. It's cervix opens. It's just, my God, we are so beautiful. And when these things are shut down or stagnated, we do lose access or have a harder time accessing this power that we have as women, whether our sexual power, our creative power, our authority, our agency, all of these things. And we're meant to create life that is beautiful, life that is led in love, life that nourishes us. And we're meant to be sustained by the health of our internal reservoirs. And I think that alone, like just the vitality and the sustenance that we regain when we start to commune and sense and be cared for in these places is profound. A lot of women feel so fatigued and exhausted or heavy in life. It's like, let's care for you. Let's open up the potency and the power of these places. Let's let you be replenished from this incredible reservoir of your internal body.
Yeah, gorgeously put. I love especially the ovaries as dream seeds. Just dream seeds. Such a gorgeous phrase. Yeah, I've been on quite a journey with my womb as well. I've been on all the types of birth control in my teens and early 20s and went off of it and experienced my life change and then had, the cysts, and it's so scary. We don't know what's going on. And you go into the doctor and not met with like that nourished energy, not met with that wholeness either, and feeling pressured into doing something about it that also doesn't feel, the best for our bodies. Um, and I'm curious how you would recommend women begin or get started in their journey to becoming nourished in this way, so holistically, so deeply in their bodies. Hello, lovers. Please bear with me for a brief interruption with a vulnerable share and offer from my heart. So when I first began my journey with spiritual intimacy and sacred sexuality, all I could afford were books and free podcasts. I was just out of college in my early 20s and honestly very, very broke. And I'm so grateful for all the complimentary, kind words and affordable wisdom that have gotten me where I am today. Price shouldn't deter you from healing. It shouldn't deter you from living the life you love or from reclaiming the most powerful energy in your body. It's my belief that time and commitment are also very powerful investments, especially when you're just dipping your toes in the water. You'll know when it's time to make the bigger cash investments in your journey, but let's begin together today with free love from my heart to yours. As you've already discovered, this podcast is free and it includes so much life-changing wisdom, but I'd also love to guide you to some free offers that are on my website, including a downloadable sexual shadow work workbook and a pleasure positive meditation. Both of these resources are amazing places to start in integrating the tantric principles of expansion and liberation into your life. And you can access these at www.tantrawork.com. talktantra2me.com/free or find a direct link in the show notes. Now let's get back to the episode.
Wow, how do we get to become nourished women? What an incredible inquiry. I just love that. I feel like step one is to sense and acknowledge our bodies, to just explore, maybe closing our eyes and taking a deep breath down into our ovaries. What does that feel like? Do I feel an ability to connect and sense into my body here? Or does it feel tense or blocked or challenging to connect there? Does it feel really emotional? Do I have an aversion of connecting there? Or does it feel like a vital, alive, fluid space? Same with womb. If I was to breathe down into my center and in between the bones of my pelvis, can I spend some time sensing into my womb? How does my womb feel? How are my bleeds by their color and fluidity informing me of the internal health of my womb? Are my bleeds really full of pain and cramps or fatigue, or are they rhythmic and easeful? Is the blood brown and dark or bright red? Does my womb feel able to be connected to, or does it feel restricted, congested, hardened in any way? And then we can go through whole body, like cervix like that, or yoni like that, or my labias like that. And wherever we feel, I believe that like every single woman ever throughout her whole life deserves woman pelvic care. Like that's what I dream of for women. That's my ovarian dream seeds, right? Um, but I think that we're coming out of a time where we've kind of gone our whole lives without being cared for, and just getting awareness of how does this part of my body feel, and the awareness that I belong to this part of my body and that this part of my body matters. And we can then let what we're feeling and sensing and noticing in our bodies inform us towards, wow, does this part of me actually really express its need for care? And what might that then be like to explore or to spend more time feeling and sitting with and being with, But I just think that first acknowledgement of I am a woman in this body and these parts of me matter, and what is it to breathe into them? Yeah.
I love that. Just this practice of deep reverence and listening is so beautiful. In terms of women, and their relationships and relating to, partners that aren't familiar with like this language and this connection to the body, like what would you say to men that are supporting women that are on this journey, like how to support women better? I do have a lot of male listeners as well, so I'm curious if you have any words of advice for them, because I feel very often it's like a whole new world for men. And obviously they don't have that embodied experience or that connection to the body in the same way. And I think that it's also important that they have an understanding of women's experience. So yeah, what do you have for men?
Oh, thank you for bringing our men into the place. We love our men. I love our men. I think that, as you said, men haven't been informed, like women haven't been informed.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe men are with a woman who deeply knows her body. And if you're listening to this podcast, that might be true, or you might be in the exploration phase of that. And also maybe not. I have an epic class called Her Anatomy, where I actually teach men feminine physiology and our engorgement pathways. There's a few pieces just around like your woman's engorgement, like takes potentially 45 minutes of
Mm-hmm.
external labial love, whole clitoral body, like not just clitoral head, but clitoral shaft, legs and bulbs, like whole vulva. that a woman's vulva is meant to be so full and juicy and alive and spent time with. And a lot of women are experiencing sexual relations where their vulva has not been spent adequate time with. We're learning as women that we really get to claim our engorgement and our full arousal. And I would offer that I find, at least in my world, my practice, and in my conversations with people, that most women have never experienced themselves fully aroused, fully engorged, fully full in their tissues before penetration and then with penetration. And most men have never experienced their woman fully engorged.
That's a lot. Most. And I don't disagree with you. I think that you're actually right. I had just never thought of it that way. But there's so many women that come to me and have expressed that they've never had they struggle with penetrative sex. It hurts, it always hurts. And it's like it comes down to, are you honoring your body? Are you doing what your body needs to get there? Are you breathing deeply and like relaxing and softening and allowing yourself to get juicy? So that's super interesting. I feel like you had more to say though, so I'll hand it
Oh,
back.
sure. Yeah, it is so interesting. And what is it for us all to just acknowledge and inquire as women? Have
Mhm.
I been making love fully aroused and engorged or no? And as men, have I been making love with my woman who is fully engorged and aroused or no? And to claim that for ourselves, it's in service to our love, it's in service to our love making, it's in service
Mhm.
to intimacy, it's in service to our union. It is so in service to the wholeness of the relationship when we get to really lean into feminine physiology and understand the engorgement pathways of the clitoral body and the vestibular bulbs and the labias and the G spot. And actually, that when a woman arouses that vulva and these engorgement gateways, these hidden erectile networks open and fill, that's also then preparing and engorging and arousing her internal spaces of yoni. And it's becoming like this plump, juicy lotus, this blossoming of the yoni. And cervix is not only also engorging, but being more protected. Because I know a lot of women also experience like deep penetrative pain, which can sometimes be hitting up against the cervix when we're not fully aroused, and the cervix deserves to be a pleasure gateway. So yeah, any men who are interested in women's anatomy, you can check out my Her Anatomy class, and it gets really nitty-gritty and it's really empowering. And I also think, it is a brave thing, and it is such an act of leadership for men to invest in understanding their women's anatomy. And it is just like, wow, so incredible when men lead that threshold, and show up for their women in that way. I'm always bowing in reverence to that.
Yeah, it's so hot. It creates so much safety and providership when that's done. And just to give a little taster, definitely check out this course. I'm very curious about all the juicy things that you share. And just as like an appetizer, I don't think that many people realize, as you had mentioned, that the clitoris isn't just this like little tiny dot on the top of our pussy. It's like quite large and underneath the tissue and has legs and maybe even just Google now, if you're not aware of this, listener, I recommend that you actually just Google like the clitoris and like actually look at the holistic like picture and the size and how it fits in, because it's really really fascinating. And also realizing that I love how you spoke to, us being in full arousal, being in service to the relationship, to the intimacy, to the union, to the man. I don't think that enough men realize that that full arousal is what allows us to be a full yes to the more primal sexuality that a lot of men are really drawn to and want to experience. Like, I know that like for my man to be able to fuck me as hard and deep as like he desires, like it's just a non-negotiable. Like I have to be super aroused. I pretty much have to have already orgasmed at least once. And then it's there and I love it. And it's such a yes for me. But yeah, I definitely used to experience a lot of that cervical pain when I was not waiting for that full arousal. And I thought that it was something wrong with me or that I was more shallow or whatever. And it's like, actually, you just need to turn yourself on a bit more.
Totally. Fill
Um,
on up, baby. I love that you shared that. It's really,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and the same goes for I've done quite a bit of cervical de-armoring, and that also helps. But for me as well, I've gotten so much more from the cervical de-armoring when I have allowed myself to get to a place of pleasure first and then feel there and really do some of the deeper massage work as well. So,
Totally. Oh, yum. And when we think about it, if there's not this large increase in blood flow, if our tissues aren't filling, then we're having friction, right, against a more dry state. I'm highly interested and invested in women being so juicy, and their tissues being so plump, in the nerve endings being so invigorated by the blood flow. So we just I think a little bit of like anatomical relationship, and we're like, oh, of course, it's
yeah.
how my sensational body comes alive.
Yeah, and I loved the analogy that you shared about the lotus and the opening and the blossoming because it really be like that. It really does open. And for any women that are listening, I recommend doing a mirror work practice where you look at your pussy before you're aroused and then you like during arousal and then after you've maybe orgasmed. And then for men as well, like if you have female partners, also doing that practice of like really observing the shifts because it's like it's so gorgeous and fascinating and yeah, stunning.
Oh, it is stunning.
So you had mentioned a bit about like your journey and how you started shifting some of your lifestyle to support your womb. You talked about changing your diet and other things. And I'm curious, I mean, I know everybody is different, but what are some like overall things that support nourishing of the womb that are practical things that we could think about taking on for our womb health?
Totally, totally. Oh, such a great question. And I love to just start where it's simple and can be integrated, right? Like one, and you probably talk about this a ton, babe, but just the breathing aspect. Can I breathe down into my womb and feel my womb throughout my day? If I was just a morsel more conscious of what it might be like to live womb led, to live with presence of my rhythmic center, and to just inquire throughout my day, is this in service to my womb and my center as a woman or no? And it can be like that. Really dense nourishment during ovulation and during our bleed. I'm a huge advocate actually just for ancestral foods, like really sourcing deeply nourishing foods. One of the best way to replenish our tissues and pleasure capacity can be through bone broth or meat stock and learning how to cook with it. Resting a little bit more during menstruation, knowing that our body is wide open to life, that this is a sacred time to internally connect, reflect, and rest. Like on the cycle of life, death, regeneration, life, the menstruation, our bleed is that death cycle. And how we rest during that time will impact the potential vitality for the next pulse of life. And even just knowing like I can and deserve to really take care of myself on my bleed and maybe have an extra rest, make it super beautiful, turn inward and spend some time with myself and body. I think all those things are really powerful, and to value that our womb brings us home to our nature by reteaching us our rhythms and how, as a woman, how in this feminine body am I living in relationship to rhythm? I think those are just some simple things. And then I love me a beautiful oil and keeping it at my bedside and just bringing my hands to my low belly and just doing some gentle circles or coming down the inside of my hip and scooping up the center to just say, womb, I love you. I'm here to just spend time bringing in blood flow, moving the limbs, sensing the energy, and feeling my body there. So I think all those things.
What a juicy, yummy practice. Like, I just imagine women hearing this and taking that on as like the way that they greet their day or in their day in bed, just massaging their creative portal. It's so gorgeous. And I want to just go even deeper on the breath piece because I think that like we've talked about that a few times. And I think that like even for myself, before I really got into this world and this work in a deep, meaningful way, I don't think that I really fully honored how important the breath piece is. It almost sounds too simple. I think for a lot of us, it's like, it's just breathing. Like I'm already doing that all day. Like what difference is it going to make to do it like more consciously? But it really makes such an impact both to our health, like our nervous system health, to relax, to soften. And that creates so much more space for pleasure as well. Like that's like the first thing that I teach women when they come to me is how to breathe properly. And that alone, almost like half of the time, if not more, is the main thing that needs to shift, or the thing that shifts everything is just learning how to take deep, nourishing breaths and then invoke intention into the breath as well. So just putting that out there for the people
So
listening.
good. It is. I just, yeah, I think just to echo that piece of like, we can think it's too simple, right? And it's actually so powerful. So, yeah.
Yeah, which is how it is. Like a lot of the things that we find that bring us health and nourishment and vitality in any area of our lives is often more of a remembering. It's often more of an unlearning than it is like taking on a bunch of new processes and procedures and like adding a bunch of stuff. It's more of like going back to the basics very, very often from my perspective.
Totally. I experience something completely similar, and I think it can be a relief for wherever we are in our journey in life to just value, can I take one simple thing and just really experience how potent and deep it can go. And, we don't have to have an hour-long womb ceremony every single day to be in relationship to our womb. We can take one really deep, beautiful breath with our womb. And that's so powerful.
Yep. Amen. So I'm feeling a landing of our conversation. I'm curious if there's anything else that you want to bring to the listeners that you're feeling passionate or inspired by. Otherwise, we can transition into some final questions that I have.
Well, yeah, I feel good. I would maybe just say that your woman, your womb and your womanhood matter so much.
Mm. Such a simple, beautiful statement that I think so many women have never heard, felt, understood, and it's so, so validating. So thank you for offering that to us. Where can people find you? How can they get involved in your world? We'll link everything in the show notes, but I'd love to just hear you with your own words, speak into it.
Thanks, babe. So women can find me on Instagram at originpelviccare.com. I am on the interwebs at originpelviccare.com as well. Oh, my Instagram is just at Origin Pelvic Care. And yeah, my primary work is hands-on in-person ceremonial experiences for the whole body, whole pelvis. And then I have a really awesome, juicy membership called the Well-Watered Woman membership, where every month we bring our hands to our bodies in different ways to water and tend connection to our tissues and the health of these incredible places that span our feminine physiology. So,
Yum, 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 yum. Okay, those will definitely be linked in the show notes. Thank you so much, Alexandra, for being here, for sharing your wisdom. And I want to express my gratitude to the listener. Thank you once more for opening yourself up to the idea of nourishment and creativity and reproductive health and sacred sexuality. With so much gratitude and love, have a sexy and spiritual day, and I'll catch you next week on Talk Tantra to Me. Ta-ta. Oops, just kidding. Still here. I have one last thing for y'all. I want to say that the internet is a really, really special place. It's why we're all here right now. And many of us, including me, wouldn't have discovered Tantra or sacred sexuality if it weren't for this nifty invention of the 20th century. And almost none of you would have found my work and my vision without it. I love the internet, and I deeply desire to expand beyond it, to experience more real life love, community, and connection. So I invite you to check out upcoming Tantra events at www.talktantratome.com/events, or click the link in the show notes. I can't wait to give you a big squeeze in real life. Okay, now that's it. Ta-ta for real. Ta-ta.